I'm Dr. Orion Taraban, and this is PsycHacks, Better Living Through Psychology. And the topic of today's short talk is most people are delusional. Now, I'm not suggesting that most people think the CIA is beaming thoughts into their consciousness or some such thing. That is very bizarre for a delusion, and because it's bizarre, it's very noticeable. If most people are delusional, in the sense of having a false belief about reality, then that could really only happen if the delusion in question were so prevalent that its ubiquity renders it invisible. Much the same way that fish can't see the water, an everyday delusion is functionally transparent to those who believe it. But for all the people under its spell, it remains a delusion nonetheless. In so many words, the most common delusion that people suffer from is that our judgments about reality inhere in reality itself. Let me explain. To begin with, you have to understand that the universe is empty. And I don't mean empty in the sense of devoid of matter, though the universe is in fact also mostly empty in this sense, but empty in an instrumental sense, like a cup is empty. It's the emptiness of a cup that makes it functional, and that emptiness is kind of non-discriminatory. It's not like a cup can only contain certain liquids and not others. A cup can contain any liquid that can be poured in it. That's what makes it useful. In this way, the universe is like a cup, in that it can contain whatever a mind projects into it. Because it is empty, the same phenomenon can contain a positive judgment projected from one mind and a negative judgment projected by another. So, which one is the phenomenon really, positive or negative? It's probably truest to say it is what it is, which, while accurate, isn't very informative. It's a tautology, which means that it's true by definition, and it doesn't give us any new knowledge. In fact, it kind of frustrates the act of knowing, which has long been used as a strategy in the service of enlightenment. But I digress. Reality is empty, in that it can receive any judgment a human mind is capable of projecting into it. And that's somewhat tragic, because most people's judgment are not grounded in objectivity or wisdom or even a consistent morality. Rather, most people's judgments are incredibly self-centered. To the vast majority of people, good is what they want or what they believe in, and bad is what they don't want and or what they don't believe in. It kind of goes like this. When something happens, and in that moment, people perceive that it aligns with their personally relevant goals, i.e., it's what they want, they judge that something as good and project that judgment into reality. And almost as soon as they do this, they kind of wipe their own memory of that projection. It's like a self-imposed amnestic disorder. And since they forget or willfully suppress that awareness that they projected that judgment into reality, then they experience reality as if their judgments inhere in reality itself. People believe they are experiencing a good thing, like the thing itself is good and not their own externally projected judgment of goodness. In the vast majority of cases, they think they are accurately perceiving something that objectively exists in reality, and that is the delusion. But before I go any further, if you're liking what you're hearing, please consider sending this video to someone who might benefit from its message. It's word-of-mouth referrals like this that really help to make the channel grow. And you can also hit the super thanks button and tip me in proportion to the value you feel you derived from this video. I really appreciate your support. Now, this delusion is enacted quintillions of times a day by billions of people. It's also constantly reified by our language when we say things like, he's such a nice boy, or what a rude thing to say, or things are starting to look up, or that date was disappointing, or that was the best thing that ever happened to me, or that's wrong, or etc. And just like delusions in clinical practice, this delusion is accompanied by a whole spectrum of insight. There are people who experience this delusion, but possess enough awareness to, let's say, hold their perceptions lightly. And there are those who are going to think that I'm absolutely nuts for suggesting that good things aren't good and bad things aren't bad. These folks, while potentially well-meaning, just don't see the water yet. From a purely psychological perspective, your experience of reality is likely much more a reflection of your own mind than a consequence of anything inherent in that reality. And this is problematic because if all people see are facets of their own projected consciousness, then the universe is really just one big hall of mirrors, which is functionally the narcissistic dilemma. Everything is a reflection of the self. And if that reflection is a projected judgment that is functionally based on whether you want or don't want something to happen, then the entire universe is reduced to an instrumental extension of your desire, which is functionally hell. When people are operating under this delusion, they actually can't see anything other than themselves. Like, their eyes can see the forms of reality, like that's a tree, and that's a man, and that's a house. But what they're really perceiving are the projected aspects of themselves that they then experience as inherent in reality. And this way of navigating reality is extraordinarily common. So, what can we do about it? Well, we can become increasingly aware of this mental process. I don't believe it's possible to completely refrain from projecting our judgments or mental constructs into reality, but I absolutely believe that it's possible to, let's say, withhold certain judgments and clarify others. That is, we can divest them of their emotionally provocative content. And that's typically a sign that we're closer to reality because, again, reality is what it is. It's kind of hard to feel one way or another about reality the more we see it clearly. I can't really say anything more about reality because going beyond that is tantamount to imbuing it with my own projected judgment. And this is why enlightenment, which may be understood as entering into reality, is always described as an ineffable experience. It's something that even the greatest spiritual traditions can kind of only point to from afar, like the Tao that can be named is not the real Tao kind of thing. And why is that? Because the Tao, or reality, will never be isomorphic with whatever projected judgment or mental construct I use to define or describe it. And to make matters worse, people might confuse the projection for the real McCoy. Make sense? Again, the vast majority of people on this planet suffer from the delusion that their judgments about reality inhere in reality. It happens so often and is reified by our language that we see nothing crazy about it. In fact, we reserve the term delusion for folks whose judgments about reality deviate significantly from the conventional judgments we have tacitly agreed are appropriate to assume inhere in reality. The two groups aren't really doing anything different. There are just socially acceptable delusions and socially unacceptable delusions, but they are delusions all the same. The only way out that I can see is to become more aware of this process. Over time, awareness can help shatter the mirrors and facilitate a more direct experience of reality as it is. Everything else is a prison of your own making. What do you think? Does this fit with your own experience? Let me know in the comments below. And if you've gotten this far, you might as well like this episode and subscribe to this channel. You may also consider becoming a channel member with perks like priority review of comments or booking a paid consultation. As always, thank you for listening.